Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel once again. Still here. We haven't stopped yet, even though I'm just recovering from the COVID experience, the gift that just keeps on giving. But I'm still here, broadcasting, trying to build this channel so that we can get real points of view from the reverse type of people known as African Americans and Black people in the United States. This is a view that is not a conservative point of view, a liberal point of view, but one about the truth, about ourselves and about others. So we're going to be reading from our book once again, the Chronicles of Kera. You can hear the other readings and you can find them at this channel. It is a very interesting book. I'll review what it is again. It is a book where three people end up going to a different planet. Yes, a different planet. And when they get there, they find that the sex roles are reversed. The women are bigger and stronger, more powerful, and more aggressive. The men are forced to be passive. It is somewhat like an old medieval society or a Victorian society, and these three men from Earth have to work and learn to behave in a way that they can live in this planet and be in peace with themselves and others. So I'm picking up with the reading at the end of chapter 31. Once again, where we left off. If this is the first time you're hearing this, just sit back and enjoy. Have a lot of fun. And if you want to hear more, you can just go back on our channel. Start from the beginning. It's an interesting and excellent book, I think, yet again. I wrote it. So here we go with the Chronicles of Kera. As we move towards the ship, several of the small studs shot out into space. They spread toward us. It was then that I realized that they were the fighters that we had seen in the Karen atmosphere while we were landing. George looked at me excitedly. Are they attacking us? Looks like it. We better back off. I'll send them a signal. We began to back away, but they pursued us and began to open fire. I could feel the ship putting the shields up. The guns were charging full power. I realized then that this had not been an exploratory ship. This had been a warship. I tried to call them again and again, but they wouldn't answer. John walked over beside me. I know they can hear us, because we talked with them before on the planet. He glanced at each of us. What do we do first? I didn't come here to get into a war. Seems that we've come to a place as bad as Earth. I shook my head and pursed my lips. Let's run like hell, I said. We don't have time for this. George pointed at the vid screen. Too late, we're surrounded on every side, and they're all opening fire. I could feel the weapons pounding on the ship. How long do you think she can take it? John asked. I shrugged. George jumped in. Not forever. Our minds might go before it does. Remember, we're linked to this thing. I rubbed my palms together. I was determined not to be forced into anything. We'll just have to wait and see, I said smugly. Let's send another message. I sent another message and waited. There was no answer. The large ship turned towards us. Two large portals opened and giant cannons pointed at us. The holes in each guns were as big as our ship. Easily, we looked at each other. Evasive action, I shouted. We all ran to our stations. George locked onto one of the small ships and fired. It was obliterated. We quickly swept through the hole it left and out of the circle. The others pursued. I took the ship up high, did a loop, coming around behind them. I opened fire. The little ship was purring like it had missed this type of action. We caught all of the ships off guard, and they were cannon fodder, all gone. And then, on his own accord, it took a large, sweeping turn and headed straight towards the mother ship. It was charging straight towards one of the cannons. John clicked his seatbelt for the first time and swirled around in his seat. "What are you doing, man?" I spread my hands. "Ship's gone mad." "Not again," George said. I could see the red beam lighting up in the tip of the cannon as we approached. Our little ship, instead of pulling away, shifted into high gear and opened fire right into the cannon. The large gun exploded, and there was a chain reaction. We could hear explosions all over the ship. We went into a barrel roll that took us over the top of the ship towards the planet Kera, and then swooped back towards Aqua. As we swooped by, our ship fired a continuous particle beam, cutting along the side of the ship like butter. It hit something, and there was a gigantic explosion that sent us end over end into the atmosphere. We were falling fast towards the planet. I did all that I could to keep us from being killed as we swooped down into a green forest, snapping trees as we plummeted toward the earth. We stopped with a great thud as the nose of the ship got stuck in the earth. I was really shaken. I don't know if it was because of being connected with the ship or because I had just been in a horrible accident. I looked at George and John. "Folks all right?" I shouted. "I am," George said. "But don't make this a habit, okay?" "I am too," John said. He began to rub the back of his neck. "Lucky I put that damn harness on, I tell you that." He unbuckled his seatbelt. "Let's get out of this damn thing. We're in Kera, aren't we?" "We're on it all right," I said. "I thought we were anyway. We were lucky to be in one piece. How could we crash twice in one day?" "Not a day, but it seemed like it, with all the horrible stuff happening to us." I tried to move the ship, but it was stuck. "Looks like we're on here to stay for a while," I said. "We're stuck or something." "Well, let's see what it is," George suggested. He opened his seatbelt and stood up. "I'll be right back. I'll be glad to get out of this damn thing. It's not too safe." The door opened. We all decided to descend down a set of stairs to the ground. There were trees around us like a forest, but not with very few rain. Thank God it was cooler than I expected on a desert planet, Kera. The ship was dug deep in the ground. I dreaded how long it would take for us to shovel it out. We stood there watching when I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I tried to shout a warning. "Quick, turn on!" before I saw a red beam of light hit John. I felt something hot touch me, and I blacked out. Ooh. Yeah, he blacked out. Let me sip my coffee as I think about this, because we're going to the next chapter. Mm. Chapter 31. We flew in one direction. When I awakened, I was in a warm place. It was a dimly lit room. I looked around and saw George and John both on small cots. They were both sleeping quietly. I snuggled down into the bed, feeling better than I had for weeks. There was no dampness, no fear, just warmth and quiet. I could hear some soldiers laughing and talking in the background. There must have been a room or a guard station right outside. I began to set out when I remembered I was on Kara. Or was I? When the explosions happened, we flew in some direction. Could we be on Aqua again? It wasn't raining. I wondered if there was a place on Aqua where it didn't rain. I relaxed again and snuggled in. For now, we were safe. It was good to be free. I didn't know at the time how short-lived this moment would be. I closed my eyes and began to drift off. I could hear a door swing open on rusted hinges. I opened my eyes, and two men came in. One was tall and black. He wore a black suit that shined like silk, a long red sash tied around his waist and along and hanging to the right. His hair was short and he was clean shaven except for a mustache. He carried something that looked like a bell or a symbol. He was accompanied by a shorter man with a mustache, mud brown hair, clean shaven too, except for the mustache, and he had brown eyes. The brown haired wear, the brown haired man wore a black silk suit also with a golden sash around his waist hanging to the left side. The two looked at each other, and the one in the gold sash gave a nod. The black man slammed the small hammer into the cymbal. It was the loudest thing I had ever heard, so loud that it made George sit straight up on his cot. John just lay there. All I could see was his arm reaching up, then his middle finger turned towards the man. I almost laughed. He sat up. "You rude bunch of bastards. Why don't you ignoramuses go and get some manners somewhere?" John hadn't been the same since Aqua. I wondered what happened. I sat up and tightened my jaw before speaking. No noise for all the No reason for all the noise or show of strength or whatever you think you're doing. We're really not impressed. The short man clenched his teeth and looked like he was about to explode. George had been silent until then. "You explode and I'll kick your ass if I need to," he said. He was angry too. I don't know what happened with him. He and John were really angry. I wonder if I was as bad as they were. The short man stepped forward, but the tall black man held him back. I heard a voice from outside the room behind them. "Be still, fellows. No need for violence." A young woman came in. She was tall and thin, almost 6 feet. She wore all white. Her top looked like a white leather halter top. Her midriff was bare and muscular. She wore a matching skirt, very short and white, with matching boots that came all the way up to the top of her calves. Her hair was black and long, down to just below her shoulders in thick black curls. She smiled a little crooked smile as she stepped past the two men and motioned for them to leave. The short one stood there for a moment as if he would refuse and then turned without a word and left in a huff. She walked over. On the way, she picked up a metal chair, spun it around, and sat straddling it, resting her elbows on the back of the chair. Another fashion model type, except this one obviously didn't know how to sit while wearing a short skirt. Luckily, the back of the chair was blocking the view. If I had been on Earth, I would have been overwhelmed by this beautiful woman. But after Aqua, where I had seen beautiful, strong women who were monsters, I was not easily impressed by feminine beauty, if that's what you'd call it. I had been brainwashed on Earth to go bonkers for a good-looking pair of breasts, legs, and so on. This wasn't Earth, though. These women were really bad. On Aqua, I realized how important it was to be careful. I wondered if women on Earth felt that way about men. I looked at her. She chewed on something. I wondered if it were gum. I thought of how much I might like some gum. She reached into her pocket and tossed me a small box. It was something like gum anyway. She smiled and said, "You chew it." I took a piece out and smelled it first. That made her grin. "Don't worry. I'm not trying to poison you." I put a piece in my mouth. It was flavored like bananas or something. I tried to hand it back to her. She waved me off. "Keep it. I hope you intend to share it with your friends." Let them get their own, I said playfully. She frowned. I passed the box to John, who took one. So, where are we? I asked. What happened? You're in the high northern kingdom of Aqua. You apparently destroyed one of the Queen's ships, and it blew you back into the atmosphere. Back on Aqua again. I shook my head. Todd and George were silent, so I continued. We were attacked. We tried to tell your people who we were. We tried to avoid you and run away, but you wouldn't answer the radio, and you would have killed us if we hadn't fired back. We have radio silence on these messages. Oh, and that's it. What you say will be taken into account. We're not savages. We're Karens. John sat up. Why are you on Aqua then? It's the time of the year when we trade minerals for water. You just happened along during an awkward time. Now you'll have to prove your innocence in a court of law. She smiled. Congratulations, Outlander. You'll have the privilege of meeting all of the high-ups from both planets. The new governor of Aqua, Queen of Kera and her daughter, and me, the ambassador to Aqua, will be your judge and your jury. She smiled. I think you better treat me nice. Don't you agree? John fell back on the bed and closed his eyes. George pursed his lips and shook his head. You freaking women are all the same. No, we aren't. Her eyebrows collapsed together. I'm really offended. I haven't hurt you. I'm just telling you how things are. She motioned towards the door. The door isn't locked. You can go out with the soldiers. Have a couple of drinks in the mess hall. She shrugged. You're innocent until proven guilty. But you understand that you aren't allowed to leave this building, don't you? I narrowed my lids. I understand a lot. She spread her hands. Don't get mad at me. I'm just a messenger. She stood up and pushed the seat back against the wall. We are not savages. We are very dutiful people. If you are not judged yet, we will not treat you with any type of contempt. We'll treat you with the utmost respect, but be careful. You have Aquans and Karens very angry at you now. Some of them may be dangerous, unofficially, that is. I'd like to see the Queen, I said abruptly. Oh, would you? Not likely. You're not even a citizen. Yes, I would. I have an appointment with Kera, and that is weeks overdue. Oh, do you? She put her hands on her hips. And how do you and Outlander happen to have gotten this appointment? We saved her and two of her guards from being shipwrecked. We became very close friends on that planet to it. I have to see her. She scratched her chin. Any evidence of that? I pulled the jewels out from my jacket. She jutted her chins out. And jutted her chin out, too, and was silent for a moment, then smiled brightly. Seems you really do know her. Seems you are engaged to the Queen. This should be very interesting. She could set you free because she loves you, or be angry because she feels that you betrayed her. She scratched her chin. I guess it depends on her mood. The Queen is moody sometimes. She smiled again, as if she were quite amused. I'll get you your appointment with the Queen. It would take some time, of course. All you have to do in the meantime is stay alive. She grinned. Come on out and have a few drinks. You must be hungry. We have food out here. She scanned our faces. George shook his head. Forgive me if I don't trust you. I would appreciate it if you could have some food and drinks brought in here. Amen to that, John said. She looked at me. And you seem to be like the adventurous type. What the hell, I said. Let's go get some food. I can never resist the temptation of having a few meals and a couple of drinks with a beautiful woman. Oh, you're the Queen's man. I know better than to touch you, she smiled. By the way, boys, my name is Diana. I wish you all the best at the trial. She looked at me and motioned for me to go first. After you. she went to the king. I lifted a hand. I'll take a minute. By the way, my name is Rob. Ah! I'll be sure to remember that. She turned and strode out the door as if the whole world was hers. To our surprise, the door was left open. We looked at each other, wondering if it was some kind of trick. John sat with his feet hanging off the cot, touching the floor. It was the first time he seemed to show any real interest in what was going on. He looked at the empty door. Very sophisticated. But she's the devil. I arched my brows and looked at George, still lying there on the bed, with his arms crossed and his eyes closed. I found John's comment interesting. I sort of liked Diana. She was sort of like a salesman or something, smooth and polished, but I sort of liked her style. I guess I always had a soft spot in my heart for women who were a bit full of themselves. Maybe that's why I was still single. Women like that were entertaining for a while until you found out that they really did think that the world revolved around them and expected you to, too. I wondered about Diana. What kind of man did she have? Was she married? How about children? We hadn't seen any. How could women have leading positions like that and bear children? Why did they have all the necessary equipment when they were playing a totally different role? I wonder what that meant. What was the process of evolution? How did it apply to these planets? How about the language? There were only slight differences in speech patterns, but we could all understand each other. I found that strange also. I think I want to go out and do some exploring, I said. John laid back on the bed. Have at it. I'm telling you what I know about these people, especially the women. George began to smile. Yes, John said. Now you're an authority on women, are you? Yes, I am, believe me. What do you think I was doing on that planet all that time? George looked at him to see if he was serious. He thought about it for a moment. There was a bit of awkward silence. George had not experienced a planet like us. He had been tripped on the ship all the time. He'd been trapped on the ship all the time. He couldn't pilot the ship, but he was still linked to it and spent much of his time studying the planet and trying to explore the social psychology of the people. I guess you're right, John. I'm sorry. John looked over at him and smiled sardonically. If you would have said that I didn't know about women on Earth, you would have been completely right. But after this experience, I guess nobody could even imagine such a thing happening to a man. But trust me, please. And you, Rob, don't let down your guard. Those were the type of women who had control over me all the time. But it was all right for them to let down that pleasant veneer to be who they really were. I took the brunt of it. Isn't that terrible, folks? We read on. I thought about it for a moment. My experience had been bad also, but different. The women who I met, the women who I met were crude. It was like being on a world of blue-collar people. I appreciate the advice, I said. I appreciate the advice also. But I would like to examine these people. I want to know about Karens. If I'm going to go there, I have to be sure. If you're gonna go there, John smiled, you have no choice. George chuckled a bit. Well, if I'm going to marry Kara, I said, justifying myself. George grinned and looked at me. If Kara's gonna marry you, you mean? He and John began to laugh. I hated it when they agreed with each other. Why don't you guys start ripping into each other again instead of me? It was a lot more enjoyable. I stood up and headed for the door. I looked over my shoulder. You sure you don't want to come? George shook his head as John waved me off. I came into a dark little room that looked like a gymnasium. The ceiling was high, like a warehouse ceiling. Its size made it look sparsely furnished. Men and women in uniform sat drinking around small round tables. Men scurried to and fro, bringing in drinks and some sort of snack foods. The lights were low. Music played in the background. It seemed like a party. I made my way across the floor, not really knowing where I was going. A woman almost bumped into me. When she saw who I was, she looked angry and then covered it over with a neutral look. She continued on. Every so often, I caught an angry glare from one soldier or the other. It was a very hostile place. I could sense it. Across the room, I saw a smiling face and a waving hand. It was Diana, the giant ambassador, dressed in gleaming white clothing. She would have been attractive if I trusted her a little bit more. She waved for me to come over. I made my way through the many small tables to her table. There were several men and women there. The women stood as I approached the table. "This is Rob," Diana said congenially. "I would like you to I would like to introduce you to part of the Karen Guard. This is Della." I smiled and extended my hand. She had a firm grip. "This is Carla." I shook her hand. "This is Bev." Bev looked angry at me first. Her face softened as she shook my hand. The three women sat there. I looked at Diana. I guessed I must have had a questioning look on my face. "These are professional men," she said nervously. "I hope you understand. Long winters, snow all the time, you know." She shrugged. I pursed my lips and hesitated before speaking. "Yes, I understand," I said flatly. "Good." She smiled again. "We're the only two odds here. You may as well come and sit beside me." She tapped the woman on the shoulder who was sitting at another table. "That chair being taken?" She shook her head. Diana slid the chair over into place, and I walked over and sat by her. I could tell she was a little drunk when I got close enough. She seemed a bit too touchy. Had it been on Earth, I would have been flattered. It would frighten me a little bit. I think she could sense it for some reason and turned her on. She flagged down a waiter. "More drinks. Another round on me." She turned to me. "What do you have, soon to be king?" I was taken back. So were the people at the table. "Didn't you know?" she asked. "This Rob is the same person who saved our queen when she was shipwrecked. We're, well, they're engaged." She leaned forward. "Really a small world, isn't it?" No one said anything. I could see a glare of anger in Belle's face as she clenched her jaw. She was trying not to show that she was angry, or not to be angry, but wasn't doing a very good job. In the meantime, the waiter came back with several beers. I took one and took a gulp out of the bottle. Our break for coffee and a cough. COVID, the gift that keeps on giving. I took one and took a gulp out of the bottle. "Now that's some good beer, ain't it, Bev?" I asked jovially. "I guess it is." She took a sip of her own beer. "Angry, aren't we, Bev?" I continued. "Very angry." She took another drink and slammed down her beer on the table. "Some of my friends and relatives were in that ship. Better an innocent stranger die than the people close to you, right?" I took another drink. She was silent. I continued. "You folks are not that different than the people on Earth where I come from. You look more polished. You carry swords and all of that, so you look more honorable. Call yourselves warriors and adopt some code of honor so you can kill people and justify it. But you're not different than people on Earth. On Earth, the men were the ones who did the murdering and justifying it by saying that they were fighting for freedom and justice and to protect their families. The women followed blindly. Some of them were as bad as the men. They just didn't have the power to commit murder. Instead, they justified it and raised the race to commit violence. Here is different. The women are the violent murderers, and the men are the ones who follow blindly and kill anyone who's not part of their little group, whether it be family, co-workers, city, states, or what. Bev was quiet. She leaned back in her chair, trying to smooth her black silk uniform. You have me wrong. You have all of us wrong. We're a peaceful people. Old rules are in place. Old rules that are hard to break. In the past, we put down our weapons and tried to live in peace. It caused a great deal of pain and suffering and almost extinction. What are we to do? Let the whole system, solar system, go to hell? As for being angry, of course I am. Anyone with sense would be. That doesn't mean that I'm going to do anything about my anger. I have to deal with it and I'll get over it. If you're innocent, I will embrace you like anyone else around this table. You haven't been tried yet, so you're innocent. She held up her body and we could bottle and we clanked beers and drank. Unfortunately, though, there are some people on these two planets who are not like me. Some people act first before they think. That's why we can't put down our swords. We have to control people like that. Unfortunately, that's just human nature. I took another drink. Are you Karen? Of course I am, can't you tell? I shook my head. She smiled and leaned forward.